Hello, my name is Walé Oyéjidé. I'm the creative director of a brand you may not have heard of, but you will soon, called Ikiré Jones. And we were fortunate enough to have some of our work featured in the upcoming film called Black Panther. We're here today to talk about and dissect the style aesthetics in the film.
Let's go!
My interest in being involved with this film was because my work as a designer is essentially a metaphor to comment on triumphs and travails of people of color, whether they be African Americans or Africans. The idea that our expression and our gifts to the world have much to contribute, much to bring, and there are a lot of different ways that we do that. Who is Ruth Carter? You should know. You've seen her work, you may not have been aware. Ruth Carter did costume design for Malcolm X, the movie, for Selma, amongst others. Ruth Carter is the costume designer for Black Panther. That means that she's responsible for the overall vision, somebody who actually does the research. She goes to the continent, looks at what people are wearing, looks at how people present themselves, and brings it to the big screen. And so it's very much a situation where we want to have somebody who looks like us be in the room when stories about us are told.
We went into the Maasai tribes, went into Surrey tribes. We were with the Ndebele in South Africa. So there were so many inspirations for a lot of things that you see, and there's so much to pull from.
I think it's great that we acknowledge people, particularly an African-American woman of color who's caring enough to making our appearances more authentic. Various cultures across the continent use tribal marks. I happen to be somebody of Yoruba, Nigerian descent, and markings are very common in my culture. And you can see in the film, T'Challa and Eric Killmonger, his adversary, both have markings on their chests and on their backs. These are markings people typically get to signify what tribe they're from, what culture they happen to be a part of, or various events that they've been through in their lives. And so it's nice to see even the most minute details covered in the film. We also have various cultural touch points like masks. Masks are something basically anybody who thinks of African art immediately refers to, and we've seen them in many of our homes. People bring them back from trips to the continent. We see them even in museums sometimes, all the way in the back and the top floor where people don't tend to visit, but they're there, and they also happen to be high art. Ask Pablo Picasso. It's dope to see Eric Killmonger wearing an African mask before he goes to war. So it's the idea that these masks throughout our culture have importance, whether they be for celebration, for ritual dances or traditions, or for war. The characters in Black Panther seem to represent people from various parts of the African continent. The clothing in the film is multicultural as well. I think many of you are probably very familiar with the Maasai culture. We see Lesotho blankets from Lesotho people. It's nice to see a different take on the blankets. T'Challa's clothing is very much of the moment because it's a good mix of both the colors and fabrics that we would see our parents wearing, but also like the slimmer fits that men of 2018 tend to wear. There's a particular scene where you see him wearing the kente cloth, which is kind of him repping Ghana, which I don't know how I feel about that as a Nigerian. As long as he eats Nigerian jollof rice, we're good. But it's a really nice touch to see like these various little African splashes in there with silhouettes that like gentlemen of my age would wear. Not necessarily something your pops would rock, but it's still like 2018, T'Challa is one of us as well. So the film is not only about African royalty, but it also features Hollywood royalty. We've got Forest Whitaker and Angela Bassett and the great Lupita. Forest Whitaker looks like Forest Whitaker always does, an elegant man who looks like your pops at a Ghanaian wedding. I don't think it really matters what Mr. Whitaker wears, he's gonna be Forest Whitaker. He shows up. And it's particularly nice to see Mr. Whitaker not playing an African dictator here. The great Angela Bassett, who's basically black royalty, and she's wearing a hat that you would see a version of this in basically every African wedding all over the continent, but this is specific to South Africa, it looks like. There is a famous Fela Kuti song called Lady that extols the virtues of strong African women. And I think this film represents that essence and idea in many different ways. From the cast that spans the globe to the depictions of female African warriors who stand alongside men and look just as regal, if not more so than the men do. So although we see women wearing decorative rings around their necks, they're also wearing plates of armor that make them be able to fight functionally and realistically. They're not wearing the skimpy bathing suit that makes one wonder how they would do battle, like some other films. So the overall feel of this film is very much inspired by both provincial African clothing and contemporary attempts to look at what people wear now. It's very much a great marriage between what we would see our parents or what we would wear going back home to visit our relatives in their villages, and what we'd wear in the streets of both Lagos, New York, London, Hong Kong, or in Wakanda itself. Yet, it doesn't look out of place in a fictional, hyper-futuristic city, which makes one wonder if we as Africans are already there. So in closing, do not wear sweatpants, fitteds, and Timbs to this film. Come as you are, but come as royalty, because that really is what you are. Be inspired by this film because this is about you, your voice, and how it deserves to be heard. This is a film, but it's really more about our history and our place in this global society and how much far we have to go and how we can only get there together. Black Panther.